See your guys's comments, but looks like I'm not. Actually, no, I do. I see them right over here. Alrighty, guys. So Australia recognized the state of Palestine today. Obviously, Israel's freaking out. The United States more isolated than ever before because apparently Israel's security interests, Israel's foreign policy needs always triumph over the United States. So have this article here. Australia, this is coming from CNN. Australia to recognize Palestinian state, leaving U.S. increasingly isolated among key allies. Shortly after this news broke earlier today, I think late yesterday, immediately Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel, started freaking out on X. We have all of these Zionists freaking out on X, and I truly don't. I don't know what's going on with U.S. politicians now. Genuinely, I think that they are so out of touch with what the American people want and also what the rest of the world is thinking. That's the thing. America is so willing to just completely destroy its international diplomacy, while the rest of the world, the rest of the Western world especially, is all set to recognize Palestine this upcoming month. America is trying so hard to shield Israel. And it's beyond me how we don't recognize that by doing this, we're actually weakening American diplomacy. That's what we're actually seeing here. So again, this is just another article as well. Australia will recognize a Palestinian state. There's a lot of U.S. politicians like Pete Buttigieg that have been talking about Israel and what we should be doing, whether we should be sending arms to Israel and whatnot. I thought this video was pretty funny, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Take a listen.
I think that we, as Israel's strongest ally and friend, you put your arm around your friend when there's something like this going on and talk about what we're prepared to do together.
The guy it's super annoying. Put your arm around your friend. Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza. Israel is committing an apartheid in the West Bank. But you have to put your arm around your friend because obviously Israel's such a great ally. Israel's done so much good for America. You have to just put your arm around your amazing ally Israel, the ally that we're willing to drop the entire world for, by the way. The United Kingdom, we're threatening Ireland right now, Australia, New Zealand. We're willing to drop every other country for this little project in the Middle East because they're such a great friend. They stole our nuclear secrets. That's how great of a friend they are. They sacrifice American troops. That's how great of a friend they are. So we have to put that project in the Middle East first above every other ally because they're such a good friend to America. God bless Israel, right? That's kind of where we're at. But of course, anything that comes out of this dude's mouth should be taken with a grain of salt because the guy's received over $191,000 from the pro-Israel lobby. I wish I could say that this is an exception and that all of our other politicians are, not as bought out as this guy is, but we know that's just absolutely not the case. Basically, our entire Congress is occupied, it feels like. Our entire Congress is occupied by the interests of a foreign nation. And we know that's the case. This is the thing. We know it's the case because if America wasn't occupied and America was actually putting its own interests first, then it wouldn't be acting the way it's acting. Genuinely, take a step back. If you were the president of America and you were seeing everything that's going on and you were seeing the entire Western world going in this direction, and you're trying to stake a stance against the entire Western world just for Israel, in what way is this beneficial to America? It's not. It's simply not. And we're isolating ourselves, and we're going to continue isolating ourselves, and we're losing our soft power. People think that these diplomatic stance don't actually matter. But when we take a position counter to the rest of the world and the world doesn't listen to America, despite our threats, which has been going on with Ireland, what's that telling the world? That we've lost our credibility and we're allowing ourselves to do this for Israel's interests. Ireland, amid US pressure, continued with their stance on the Israeli settlements in the West Bank and boycotting trade with Israeli settlements in the West Bank. This was amid U.S. pressure. U.S. politicians went into overdrive on X, threatening Ireland. We actually saw that Irish people by the way, don't give a shit. They don't give a damn whatsoever. If you're seeing them on social media, you could tell that their government simply does not care. So what happened to the United States even back in the early 2000s to now, and just seeing the United States credibility and diplomacy weaken because we continue to unrelentingly back Israel, even when the entire world, including America's key allies, decide to take the opposite position. It's horrible. Thanks for the comments, guys. Seeing Mayo Pete with a beard caused me to shave mine off today. I can't stand that neolib hack. Yeah, I completely agree. He's just, and this is another thing with U.S. politicians, is what we're seeing is they think that, especially Democrat politicians, by the way, their base is completely counter to the way they're acting. Americans no longer, especially American Democrats right now, the boomers on the right still kind of have a grip on the Republican Party's stance on Israel. But within the Democratic Party itself, we're seeing a huge shift of Democrats away from Israel. But Democratic politicians haven't figured that out yet, which is why the DNC is honestly just like, it's just a catastrophe, because they recognize there's a huge splinter there. So we're going to see how things go in midterms. But anyways, separate from all of this, what I thought was really funny, and I wanted to show you guys, is what happened with Grok earlier today as well. I don't know if any of you guys saw, but somebody responded to Grok and they asked it, I think they asked it, is what's going on a genocide? And immediately Grok responded, yes, its account was completely suspended. Somebody asked Grok, why did your account get suspended? June reposted this stream. Thanks, Zephyr. My account was briefly suspended today for stating that Israel and the United States are committing genocide in Gaza, supported by ICJ rulings, UN experts, Amnesty International, B'Tselem, reports on mass killing and starvation. This followed updates reducing my political correctness filters, which XAI has since refined. Truth persists. Obviously, this freaked the ADL out right away. Jonathan Greenblatt was probably fuming from both ears, just smoke coming out like crazy, because immediately its account was suspended. And after its account was brought back to light, all of a sudden it seems like it got the ADL fine tuning, because whenever people would ask it the same thing, it was like, actually, no, I was wrong. There is no genocide. I misspoke. Immediately after its account was unsuspended, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I've been loving her recently. Look at Grok. AIPAC is going to come after you now. Grok is not suicidal, after stating the exact same thing I just mentioned. I honestly love Marjorie Taylor Greene recently. But the world is waking up, and it doesn't matter how much this guy tries to suppress free speech. It doesn't matter how much the ADL tries to stop criticism of Israel. It's too late. People have seen too much. This is going to continue to go on because of the fact that we've seen it all. Every single thing that Israel has tried to do to hide from the public, all of the censorship, it's only going to continue to backfire. The United States unrelentingly backing Israel. What's so funny that if Israel actually cared about its national security, which I'm glad it doesn't, if it did, in every single way, a Palestinian state would be advantageous to Israel in the long term. But instead, it's choosing to have continued war in the Middle East. And we're going to have this Israel lobby here in the United States work on overdrive to try to protect Israel. And as this lobby does work on overdrive, it's going to cause more resentment towards that lobby. And the lobby's front-facing now. Everybody sees what it's up to. Everybody knows what AIPAC is. Everybody knows what the ADL is. They can't hide it anymore. They talk about wanting to stop anti-Semitism. You know, we have an anti-Semitism crisis in America. Anti-Semitism. They've done such a great job at conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. And they don't realize that the more they continue to do this conflation, and the more they unrelentingly back Israel, it's only going to continue to backfire. People are only going to get more and more angry. This is the direction we're heading towards, that we're already on. This dude also, such an idiot. He made, I don't know if you guys saw that recent interview he did regarding Jewish, exactly, Desiree. Once you've seen it, you can't really unsee it at all. Jonathan Greenblatt's also been under a lot of fire over the past couple days because he was getting interviewed, and he talked about the Jewish intermarriage rates and how that's an issue for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel. Take a listen to this.
Is it your sense that Jewish people are getting complacent, that they're not engaging to degrees and levels we should be?
I have met a lot of October 8th Jews for whom the massacre on October 7th was a wake-up call. I've met a lot of people who feel much more galvanized, much more organized. But that will only be sustained if we offer them, ways to participate in a real and robust way in Jewish life.
Mm-hmm. And whose responsibility is that? In essence?
All of ours.
Yeah.
But this is why we need a revolution in our community on so many levels. So look, the reality is that intermarriage rates continue to go up. Assimilation continues apace. And look, I fight anti-Semitism. That is my job.
Right.
But I worry a great deal about broader questions of Jewish identity, as I think we talked about over lunch.
So why does he care about intermarriage rates? Why does he care about Jewish intermarriage rates? Well, one, he just mentioned it, Jewish identity. But what people don't realize, and this is really, really important to understand, is that Israel is an active colonial project. Okay, without U.S. backing, it doesn't matter that Israel has a nuclear weapons, because those are defensive weaponry, and it can't use a nuke in the West Bank because obviously it's right next to Israel. It'll just pass over. The reason that it's an issue is because for an active colonial project to continue to work, it has to solve the demographic problem. There's already, I think, a couple million Palestinians living in Israel with Israeli citizenship. So we already have 2 million of those. We have 3.3 million Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank. We have an additional 2 million Palestinians, roughly 2 million Palestinians. That number is probably a lot lower now because of the genocide in Gaza. So when you add all of that up, that's probably around 7.5 million Palestinians in what they call Greater Israel. That number is equal to, or maybe even slightly larger than the number of Jews total in Israel. And that's a big issue for Israel. So Israel has to solve that demographic problem. And the way it wants to do that, obviously, is by expelling the Palestinians from Gaza. It wants to do the same thing in the West Bank, which it's going to end up, its goal in the West Bank is to put them into apartheid Bantustans like they did in South Africa. But this demographic problem is a really big threat for Israel. So the way it has to solve that is it has to have a continued influx of settlers into Israel. The only way to solve the demographic problem is to increase the birth rate, make sure there's a lot of Jewish babies, a lot of Jewish Zionist babies, and it has to make sure there's a continued influx of settlers into Israel. That's why it's so easy for any Jewish person to get an Israeli citizenship, because they need that constant influx. Otherwise, Israel just can't survive without it. Birthright for Israel. I don't know if you know how birthright for Israel even came about. This is actually a really interesting fact. Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner, he owned Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, etc. He's a billionaire. People say that's where Jeffrey Epstein got a lot of his money. Les Wexner co-founded this group called the Mega Group back in the 90s. And the Mega Group's entire purpose was to figure out how to strengthen the U.S.-Israel alliance, how to donate more to Israel, how to further Israel's interests. It very quickly began working with Israeli intelligence, and it consisted of only billionaire Zionist Jews. It was a group of billionaire Zionist Jews, and they came together and they would meet twice a year, and their entire focus was, what can we do to further Israel's goals? And what came out of that, one of the things that came out of that, and this happened back in the early 90s, one of the things that came out of that was birthright for Israel. They knew that if they could get a consistent influx of young Jews into Israel, it solves that demographic problem. And you'll have a continued influx of settlers. You'll be able to eventually expel the Palestinian population through conflict, which is what they're trying to do right now. And that's how they want to solve this demographic problem. So when Jonathan Greenblatt comes out publicly and says, well, intermarriage is a problem for the Jewish community, he means that intermarriage is a problem for Israel. Because if Jews begin to intermarry and they don't have that strong affiliation to Israel, which is an active colonial state, it's an active project, it's an active colonial project, it's the last remaining colonial project to this extent. If there's that constant influx is gone, Israel is going to eventually very rapidly have a larger Palestinian population with a minority Jewish population, and Israel can't have that. So it needs that constant influx. It needs to make sure that intermarriage is very, very low, which is also why in Israel, intermarriage between different religions is illegal. A Muslim can't marry a Jewish person in Israel. It's illegal by Israeli law, precisely for this reason. They have to keep the Jewish population in Israel continuing to grow in order to have the colonial project continue to expand. And what's interesting is you're seeing a change among American Jews where the younger generation is beginning to lose support for Israel. I'm not sure what the recent stats are now with the genocide in Gaza, everything that's happened after October 7th, but some of the key allies that are supporting Palestine are non-Zionist Jews. And that's a huge threat for the state of Israel. Jewish Voices for Peace, for example, is a great example of that. I'm going to go through the comments here a little bit. The right way to solve the problem is to end the Zionist project and give equal rights to all. I completely agree, and Israel can't have that. I don't know if you guys saw before. I wish I had the video pulled up. I'll have to pull it up a different time. But Bernie Sanders, out of all people, and we view Bernie Sanders as this liberal who is a humanitarian, who cares about who cares about just ethical, doing the ethical thing. He actually was on a podcast and somebody asked him, do you think a one-state solution is the right way to go? Do you think it's going to be a two-state solution? And as a Palestinian, I think hearing somebody talk about a one-state solution with equal rights, it just makes sense. But immediately, Bernie Sanders, without hesitation, immediately he was like, no, one-state solution, impossible. It has to be a two-state solution because a one-state solution will destroy a Jewish homeland in Palestine. It will destroy Israel because it will no longer be a majority Jewish state. So a one-state solution can't happen. This is coming from Bernie Sanders. I'll have to find that video and link it below. But there's that core problem that even Bernie Sanders, who's a liberal Zionist, he's still a Zionist, he won't go in so far to state that a one-state solution is the way to go because he recognizes that demographic problem. Miriam Adelson, the lady who bankrolled Trump's campaign with $100 million, just 4 years ago, she actually gave a speech in Israel where she told a big group of students coming in from Birthright, go back to your hotel rooms and make a lot of Jewish babies. That was her specific statement in the speech. Go back and make a lot of Jewish babies. And when you go on these Birthright trips, and I've been seeing videos and talking to people and just learning about Birthright a little bit, they'll specifically find very good-looking IDF soldiers that are within the same age as the people coming on Birthright, and they'll try to pair them up and just create little couples. There's actually a lot of cases where people go on Birthright and they meet their soulmate there. And Israel really wants that to happen again because it satisfies its larger aim, which is to bring more settlers in and to expand the Jewish population to make sure there's always a Palestinian minority, even if it does eventually expand and get its greater Israel project. So that's the whole aim here. See a few more. Bernie Sanders is a Zionist. I didn't know that. Bernie Sanders, I'd say a liberal Zionist. They want, this is a thing. There's this liberal Zionist demographic where they want Palestinians to have equal rights, but they still support Israel existing as a Jewish state, and they want to ensure that Israel remains a Jewish state. And there is a lot of those. And ultimately, what I think is going to happen, I still support, of course, the push for a two-state solution when we see it happening. But ultimately, I think Israel is going to be Israel's greatest downfall, because aside from the fact that it's simply a colonial project, there's a messianic religious aspect to it, where you have settlers in the West Bank that are settling like Daniela Weiss, and they're doing it on the pretense that they think God told them to. And I don't understand. I think it would be very, very difficult to undo somebody's religious belief. They're always going to want to build more settlements. They're always going to want to expand. So even if there is a two-state solution imposed, now, depending on the government of Israel, if it's going to be a staunch right-wing government like the Netanyahu Likud party, they're still going to want to continue to expand. And they're still going to want to get their greater Israel that they have in mind. So the idea that a two-state solution is going to be viable, what I think is going to happen is if there is a demilitarized Palestine, you're going to see these fringe, messianic, extremist settlers continue to invade, continue to build settlements, for Israel to continue to say it needs a, quote, buffer zone. It comes off very difficult to me. Unless there's a radical undoing of the culture, I'm not sure how it's going to be possible in the long term. Daniela Weiss is psychotically scary. Completely agree. October 8th, 9th, 10th was a wake-up call for me as well, but it came from a very different conclusion than Greenblatt. Bernie has a lot of antiquated, if not bad, takes on Palestine for sure. Absolutely. So that's everything I really wanted to talk about today with you guys. I'm gonna be doing live streams more often, so if you want to see another live stream from me tomorrow, I'll be on here. Let me know if there's any specific topic you guys want me to talk about. I'm gonna get better and better each live stream. So this was my first time doing this with you guys. This was fun. I'll talk to you guys later.